Perfect Pop Podcast.
So it's the segment of the show where we have a coffee and a chat, of course sponsored by Madhouse Coffee. You can find out more about them when I give you some more information later, because that's generally how it works, because it's more important really to actually have a chat to the person that we're going to be speaking to. We've got Dave Pankhurst here. Now Dave, tell us all about what you do. Because the first line of your email, it made my ears prick up in a way that it maybe wouldn't have made them prick up about 20 years ago. But we'll get to that bit in a little while. So just tell us about what it is that you do and why you do it.
Okay, well, I'm intrigued about the ears pricking up part.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on, George. A real pleasure.
That's right.
And thanks for reaching out. So I run a jazz jam in Harpenden. I've been doing that for just over a year now. It's a project I've been sort of trying to set up for a little while, or thinking about setting up. And since starting it in December last year, it really seems to have taken off.
We'll now get to the 20 years bit. Now, 20 years ago, it's almost like jazz was a bit of a really sort of term. And I'm going to put myself very firmly in this category. I would not have been interested in that at all whatsoever. But then I think definitely since about 2010 onwards, it's had a bit of a revival, really, isn't it? One of my YouTube finds over the last 18 months or so was a group in New York called the New Jazz Underground, who are basically all guys sub 25, all playing Duke Ellington. Where has that come from, do you think? Why do you think it suddenly come away from the whole lift music thing, and then it's actually something that people can get back into? And also, just of course, Andre 3000 has just released a jazz album.
I think I would say that, I mean, it's never really gone away. So there's always a hardcore of jazz enthusiasts out there that have been into it, and so my own story with jazz, I come from a very much a sort of pop rock background, and I sort of came to jazz, if you like. Over the last few years, there's been the whole new jazz thing going on in London, and London's been very much at the centre of that movement, hasn't it? So there's loads of really great, young, talented, proper jazz musicians out there, and that have carried the standard for jazz, and that's obviously had an impact in kind of bringing that to a wider audience than would have been there already. But for myself, I mean, I guess I just got into it through interest, really, not because it was particularly sort of popular at the time, but first consciousness of it were probably around the early 90s with acid jazz, and that obviously being quite a big thing on the pop scene, and then later on sort of digging further into the back catalogue, into bebop and all of that.
So when you're doing these nights, what sort of people actually come along to them? What's the state of play with the participants, as it were?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the great things about it. Actually, it is really diverse in terms of all kind of ages and backgrounds of people turning up. So on a typical night, we will have some very young musicians. In fact, we've had musicians as young as 13 joining in, with their sort of parents bringing them along to have their first steps in improvisation and jazz music, all the way up to, I think, our elder statesperson of jazz is the legendary Bob Power, who's been on the jazz scene in the St Albans area since I was at the school, and is continuing to sort of inspire I think he's onto his second generation of mentees now, sort of bringing jazz to and jazz learning to an ever wider audience. It's not just a musical occasion, but it's a social occasion. So there's lots of chat, and people are, I think, starting to use it as just a base, really, to have discussions about music, to play some music, have a good time. That's why I wanted to do it in the first place. My own social life has always revolved quite heavily around music, and it was just feeling a bit of a drought, and I felt, right, so now is the time for me to to try and step forward and bring people together and create something.
And just to pick up on something you said a little while ago as well, that's if you have a variety of ages and have a lot of people bringing in experience, and talking about music, it's sort of, you don't want to sort of make it too much about self-development and learning, but it is kind of like that, because I think as you've been talking there, and I was thinking, well, what's sort of the difference between this and just an open mic night, and I think with the whole open mic thing, there's lots of them around the country and a lot of them are happy little groups of people, and they do that thing, but it's always, they tend to sort of fall into a pattern of some person turns up week on week, plays the same things, and then they go home again. And that's sort of how it, and nobody really sort of gets too much from that. And it sounds like from what you're saying is that there's a lot of people that seem to be sort of taking a lot from the experience that you're creating, both intellectually and personally.
Well, I would certainly hope so. Whatever it is they are looking for out of the experience, I hope they get. I think there's something about jazz that is it's quite it's a free expression, isn't it? There's a sense of it. It's being quite a pure form of musical communication. It's of the moment, and it just exists in the moment. One of my great musical heroes, Bill Bruford, who actually sort of came from the sort of prog rock tradition but moved into jazz later on. And one of his favourite quotes, which wasn't his own, but I can't remember whose it was. He says, "What's the definition of jazz?" And the definition, it never sounds the same way once. And the sort of
that's the sort of quote you've just got to stop and think about it. And go, oh yeah, that's quite clever. Okay, cool.
But it's a form of fairly sort of basic self-expression. I think obviously there's technicality about it as well, but there's something great about that. It's the thing that's always drawn me to jazz music, is the sense of it being a kind of a pure type of expression, using your sort of musical vocabulary and the fact that it sort of exists just in that moment. Some great recordings have been committed to tape over the years. That sounds,
but that's the thing,
and hopefully
though,
making.
Sorry to cut across you, because if you go back to before jazz records started being recorded, and you listen to the way that they're played. I mean, it is music to relax to, whether you're listening to it or you're playing it. I mean, obviously you're going to be relaxing in a different way. I mean, slightly more energetic way probably if you're playing it. But it's that way to get things out of your system.
Absolutely, and I hope it's a nice experience for the audience as well. So being a jam night, there you have people with a range of different backgrounds, levels of ability, all kind of joining in together. We actually have some pretty decent musicians as part of the house band as well. So there's as well as the jamming, you get a nice bit of sort of jazz from people who've spent years playing in various sort of fora. So it's a real sort of mixture.
So it's the start of January. It's the most depressing day of the year, supposedly. What's sort of the plan for 2024 for you guys?
The basic plan is we have a jam on the last Thursday of each month, and there is indeed one a week on Thursday. So the next one is Thursday, the 25th of January. That'll be at Elizabeth Lawn Tennis Club in Harpenden from 7:30 to 10:30. It is a members club, but if you would like to come along, just visit the website and get in touch. That's all perfectly fine. It's also Burns night, I understand. So
yes, I hear they've been catching the haggises.
Yeah, there may be a certain Scottish flavour. Who knows? But yeah, so if you'd like more info, just check out our website, which is jazzjam.online. We also have a WhatsApp group for the musicians involved. So if you would like to be involved in it, get in touch via the website, and we can add you to the WhatsApp group where all the chat and the planning takes place.
It's been lovely to speak to you, Dave. Thank you for your time. Though I've got to say, because again we'll be doing this interview, and I'm thinking we're going to play a record on the end of this, and I don't have a suggestion. So I'm going to ask you for what do you want to hear?
In order to shake off the the Blue Monday Blues, I would suggest a track called Giant Steps by John Coltrane.
Yes.
Just something with some real pace and energy to kind of get the blood flowing, something like that. But I could choose so many things, but there we go, there it is.
Big thank you there to Dave Pankhurst from the Southdown Jazz Collective. You can find out more about those guys over at jazzjam.online. And as luck would have it, I was actually able to find a version of Giant Steps by the aforementioned New Jazz Underground. So this, being recorded in New York, is on their YouTube channel, plus a whole bunch of other things. So go and check these guys out as well. Here we go.